This is The Long Road to Publishing, the podcast where we hear from authors who have traveled a long and bumpy road to publishing their books. Whether you're just starting out on your own writing and publishing journey, or if you're all too aware of the many possible detours along the way, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Eva Langston, author, writing instructor, and creator of Eva's newsletter for writers on Substack. Thank you so much for coming along on the ride. Today's episode is with horror and thriller author Jennifer Fawcett. Now, you know it's a good publishing story when it literally makes me gasp out loud, which is what happened during this interview. It is such an incredible story. You will not believe how many times Jennifer revised the manuscript that eventually, and I mean eventually, became her debut novel, Beneath the Stairs. It's a great episode, and I can't wait for you to hear it. As usual, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And now on to the episode, which I'm calling Revise and Resubmit on Repeat, or Submission Hell and the Kindness of Editors. Jennifer Fawcett is the author of Beneath the Stairs and Keep This For Me, both published by Atria. Before writing books, she was an award-winning playwright and co-founder of the theater company Working Group. Born and raised in Canada, she now lives in the Hudson Valley with her husband and son. Visit her at www.jenniferfawcettauthor.com. So, Jennifer, welcome to The Long Road to Publishing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so interested to hear kind of about your theater background and then now your novel writing.
That's a big part of my road, I guess, is the theater, is all the theater stuff.
More often than I realize, I'll be, talking to somebody who writes books, and then it turns out they have some like an acting background, or they used to try to write screenplays. So I do think it's more common than sometimes people realize. But.
Yeah.
So before we get started talking about, I know you told me you have a long journey, so I'm excited to hear about that. But when this episode airs, your second novel, Keep This For Me, will have just come out, I think October 7th. Is that right?
October 7th, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to give us a little short elevator pitch to entice people to read it?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. So Keep This For Me is my second book, and it is loosely based on a true story. Essentially, it is the story of a young woman named Fiona. When Fiona was 2, her mother was abducted and killed by a serial killer. So she is growing up with this label of victim stamped on her. However, 30 years later, now, she finds out that that serial killer, Eddie Ward, has confessed on his prison deathbed that he didn't actually kill her mother. She just disappeared into the lake. So Fiona goes back to the lakeside town where this happened to try and find out what actually happened to her mother. But when she's back there, another young woman is abducted in very much the same way. And Eddie Ward's family is still in the area. So there's a real copycat quality to it. And so she's starting to wonder, is it happening again? And in the meantime, unbeknownst to her, as she gets deeper and deeper into knowing this family of the serial killer, she is being pulled into a trap.
Ooh. So. Love it. And okay, I have to ask, because you said it's loosely based on a true story. Is this something you've read about in the newspaper or?
Many years ago. So many years ago, I read about a man who was a long haul trucker who had just been arrested for killing 2 young women. However, the strange thing about him was that his father was also a long haul trucker. And I'm not saying anything bad about long haul truckers here,
right.
But his father also did the same thing and had been a serial killer and had picked up people all over the country and had killed them and taken them home and buried them in his backyard where this man, as a boy, had grown up. So that really fascinated me. Is there a sort of a genetic component to this? And really what I'm fascinated by are the sort of the ripple effects of violence long term. And so there's 2 families in the novel. There's the victim's family. There's Fiona, who's trying to understand what actually happened to her mother and who her mother was beyond just that label of victim. But then I also have the serial killer's family, the son, and then another generation beyond that, and they're also grappling with this legacy that they have. I think it's very human. We try and make sense of what's happened to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We try and create logic, we create story. And how do you grapple with something where it's a random act of violence? And so who do you blame? Like what's it's there's not much to hold on to there. And that's got to be so complicated and frustrating in the grief process.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds intense, but also very, very interesting. Very interesting. Well, so this is where you are now on the eve of this book coming out.
Yes.
And now we're going to rewind, rewind way back to I am always curious to know, because I know so many people say, oh, I've always wanted to be a writer, but when do you feel like you got serious about writing?
I it was after I graduated from college. And but at that point my writing was going to be for plays because I went to school to be an actor. And that was my dream. And I started writing after I graduated because writing was giving me a way forward. As an actor, I felt like I'm always waiting for permission, right? Waiting for someone
Hmm.
to cast me, waiting for someone to let me audition, waiting for someone to choose a play where there's a part that I could possibly play. And so much of that felt completely out of my control. And so I started writing as a way of giving myself work.
Yeah.
It was a real kind of paradigm shift for me because I ended up writing a one person play that I then performed. And it was like I gave myself agency.
Yeah.
And that changed everything for me. I still kept trying to be an actor, but that allowed me to do it more on my own terms. And so that was really, I mean, so I was probably like 22 when that happened.
And
Um,
where were you?
I was in Toronto.
Okay. Which has a pretty big theater
It
scene, right?
does. Yeah. 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 So I'm Canadian. I'm sure my vowels have given me away. I know, though I now also I'm dual. I now live in the US. But I'd gone to school in Toronto. And yeah, Toronto has a really big theater scene. And the great thing about it is that it had a lot of opportunities for new work, festivals and that sort of thing. And so that's where a lot of people kind of got their start. And so that's where I got my start was, and it was terrifying. Like the first time I took my own writing, something that, here's this thing that I wrote, and it's just been me, and I'd shown it to a couple of other people, and I had the opportunity to present it to people. It was so terrifying because no one had told me that I was allowed to do it. You know what I mean? Like it hadn't been vetted by an editor or a director or anybody outside saying, yes, this is worthy of someone else's attention. I just wanted to do it, and so I did it. And but it went really well. People liked it and they responded. And so, like I said, it changed everything for me. And so from that point forward, I started really thinking of myself as a writer.
Full disclosure, I also have some acting background. I think I told you this before, but I just remember always having this feeling like going to auditions and being like, yeah, just if I could just get chosen, then I would know I was good enough. And like you're always looking for other people to tell you that
Yes.
you're good enough.
Yes,
And of course that happens in the writing world too,
it does.
but you can still I think it's interesting that you were like, well, I'm going to write a play where the main character is a perfect role for me. You know, I am the perfect person to play this role because I am creating it myself. So,
Exactly. And it's like I'm giving myself permission.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
feel like that idea of giving permission, I mean, I teach writing a lot now. I feel like that giving permission is one of the biggest things that I end up talking about with new writers.
Hmm.
And it's not, I can't give them permission. They have to give themselves permission.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that whole idea, what you were saying about was an actor like waiting to be chosen, and as a writer, you can make something, right? Like you can make something yourself.
Hmm.
even if no one even if no one wants it,
Right? You could still make
you can
it.
still make the darn thing.
That's right.
But there's actually, I think, tremendous meaning in that.
Well, so okay, so you were doing playwriting. It was going pretty well. I don't know if you do you want to tell us more about your time in theater, or should we talk about, I mean, I do want to hear about when you decided to pivot to novel writing, but is there more important things to say about playwriting?
And just it taught me a tremendous amount about story. I think
Mm,
people talk a lot about the sort of your starter novel, or the thing that you had to kind of write and then put away. The first book that I wrote is the first book that got published, but I had a lot of practice because I'd written about 20 plays before that. And I have definitely, some of those are in the drawer and will never be seen. But I learned a tremendous amount about character and story. I guess so it was a great sort of story, like foundation, I guess is the word I'm
mm,
looking for. Foundation for
hmm.
going into novel writing. I mean, it's different. It's a different form. You have different tools to work with. And so that was one of the really interesting things to learn about, like when I made the transition.
So yeah, so what did make you decide you'd written all of these plays, maybe some of them got produced
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then what made you decide I think I want to try novel writing?
I was in the immigration process here in the US, and I was unable to work. I was waiting for my green card. I had no children. I was completely broke and kind of stuck for a little while. And my friend told me about NaNoWriMo,
Uh-huh.
National Novel Writing Month, and I'd never heard of it. And I'd always had this secret desire to write a book, but was always like, oh, I'm so intimidating. But I had no excuses basically for not doing it, because I literally like couldn't do anything else. Like I had no money to like go out and do stuff, and I couldn't work. So I tried NaNoWriMo, and what was really great about it was, so if anyone doesn't know NaNoWriMo, the whole goal of NaNoWriMo is to write 50,000 words through the month of November, which breaks down to, I'm not sure the exact math, it's like 1,633 or something like that
Yeah,
words a
yeah.
day. And it's all about quantity. It's not actually about quality, which for someone like me who can get very in her head and judgy and all that, the internal editor is very loud. It was just about just get words on the page. And instead of thinking of it as 50,000 words, I thought of it as like 1,600 words a day.
Hmm.
But, those stack up, and a story started to come. And I think because I removed the expectation of quality, I gave myself permission, going back to that, to just tell myself a story. And that's where Beneath the Stairs, my first book, was born. So I actually hit 60,000 words by the end of the month. And I had this thing that I was like,
Oh, I made
oh, I
something.
made something. That's not a play. Now, 60,000 words is not a novel. It didn't have an ending, but I had a thing. Like I had a
Yeah.
thing that I was like, cool, I did this.
Did you go into the month with an idea or did it happen kind of
It
organically?
happened really organically. I sort of had a picture. I don't know what got me thinking. I started thinking about this haunted house that I visited with friends when I was about 13 years old. It was the summer between eighth grade and ninth grade. So a huge transition year, about to go into high school. And we'd gone into this haunted house. And that was my starting point. Yeah, so I had 60,000 words of this story that for the most part held together, and I really liked. I had no outline. I had no idea how to end it. I just liked it. And then so I put it away, and got my green card and was able to start working, and basically I was still considered myself a playwright. And so I would get like a play project. And so I would be focused on that, and I would write the play, and we were producing plays. But then in the down times, I would take it back out and look at it again. And every time I took it back out, I was like, there's something here. Like, I still like this. I still
Hmm.
can't figure out how it ends, but I still like it. And I think there was something in that, like, that I kept going back to it, and it kept holding my attention.
Mm.
And so I eventually, like 6 years later, figured out how to end it. then I had a book, and then I started querying agents, and the Victoria Marini was my first pick for agent, and I queried her, and she wrote back and asked for a full, and I sent it to her, and she read it, and she said, no, but if you revise, I would reread it. And so I revised, and she reread it, and she signed me.
Wow.
My acquiring an agent part was actually fairly smooth.
Yeah.
The bumps all came afterward.
Everybody has a bump or a detour or many somewhere. It may not be the
Somewhere.
same place that you have them, but
Exactly. Because,
that's
yeah,
fascinating. Like you somehow knew that she was the one. Well, I have two questions. One is like you said it took like 6 years before you figured out how to end it. Did you try different endings that didn't work or like how did it just come to you in a dream?
yeah, I'm trying to think because it was always sort of simmering in the back of my mind while I was like writing other plays. And the plays that I write are very different. I don't write thriller plays, but it was always simmering. And I think I don't remember what actually clicked. I it might have been like something I heard on the radio,
Mm,
but I feel like when you have a story simmering, your mind is sort of like looking and open, and then you see something or you hear something, and it's kind of working in the background.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like every time you went back and looked at it, your brain was it was still in there. It was
It was
still
all still
working on
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So then my other question is when your agent said, I would consider this if you revise, how did you figure out what to revise?
I'm trying to remember. I think she gave a few notes.
Hmm.
And I actually think that I'm pretty good at revision. I like revision. First drafts terrify me, but I like revision.
Yeah.
And so I think she must have given me a few notes. And so I went back and I did a very deep, every time I revised this manuscript, and I revised it so many times after this. I did a really deep revision. Like I would often be like taking out big chunks and
Hmm.
rewriting because I'd found an ending, but it wasn't right. And so I when I say I did a revision, like that was like months and months of work. It's very hard, I think, to revise deep. Like you have to really kind of step back and take this bird's eye view of the whole piece.
Yeah.
I must have managed to do that. And it's something that I would always say to people is that if you're given the opportunity, if you're given that invitation to revise and resubmit, take it. Like I don't think agents offer that if they're not serious about it because they just don't have time.
Yeah, no, I do think that's true. When an agent is saying that they would look at something again, and I've even heard this too of if an agent says, this project isn't right for me, but I please send me your next one, that is something genuine that they are saying, I see something in your writing
Absolutely.
and you should
Yeah.
take them up on it. If
And
you
you
s-
need to take them up on it. Yeah. Like I do think it is being like your feelings can get hurt and you're like, oh, but I think there is something there if they're responding to your writing. And that was the thing is that I think I was encouraged because I just felt like I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I sent it to her, and she responded to the writing like there was clearly something there that she liked.
so you submitted the revised manuscript, she was like, "Great, I want to sign you."
I want to sign you.
And then it sounds like you guys did more revisions.
Well, so she said, I'd like to sign you, and then you're going to do another pass, another before we send it out on submission. And I had just had a baby. I had like a 2-week-old baby.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, no problem. Yes, I have a baby. My baby's going to sleep.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. So this time she sent much more detailed notes. And then I proceeded to deal with new motherhood and a baby that actually didn't want to sleep. And so that it took a very long time for me to actually get it written, but I did. I did the revision months later. I mean, I was working on it the whole time, but um and then we went out on submission. So that was really exciting. We went out on submission. She sent me and she asked, "Do you want to see the feedback from the people who I'm sending this to?" And I said, "Yes." And so I don't remember how much time passed, but one by one, the feedback started coming in. So I got all these rejections. Basically, everyone rejected it, but they were very kind rejections. There was a lot that they liked, and this and that, and this and that. And I mean, it was heartbreaking. And she remained very positive throughout, but it was like kind of we knocked down the list. Like, okay, all right, well, one came in, but there's now nine more. Oh, two came in, but there's eight more, and down and down and down we go. And then they all rejected it. So that was really heartbreaking. But I was getting the feedback, and the feedback seemed to be fairly consistent. And so I said, let me revise again based on this feedback. And there was one editor who actually was willing to get on the phone with me, which was
Well, that's
incredibly,
nice.
it was so generous. Like, she had, I now know how insanely busy these people are. We got on the phone, and she must have talked to me like 45 minutes, an hour,
Oh,
giving me
wow.
like really like fantastic feedback. So it was this combination of being really heartbreaking, but also encouraging, like feeling like I'm close. So
Hmm.
I took all the feedback, and I did another massive revision, threw out about a third of the book and restarted. And again, Victoria read it, and she created another sub list, and we went out on sub, and the very same thing happened.
Oh my gosh. And these were all different editors who hadn't seen the first. Okay. Oh,
Yes.
wow. And so then you start getting the rejections again. And were you
One by
still,
one, and I see them because they come into my inbox. So I'd be like in the middle of grocery shopping, and I'd get an email from my agent. So I open it, and I'm standing there next to the like pasta sauce, feeling shame and despair and frustration and all of it. And so again, sort of better feedback this time, but still not landing. And so much of like, I love this, I read this so quickly, blah blah blah, I was really engaged, and there was always a but.
hmm.
So I went through that whole process again. And again, I had another editor who was willing to get on the phone with me. And so I got on the phone again with another different editor. And she talked me through many, many notes. And she said I would be willing to look at this again. So I took all of her notes, I revised it, and I sent it to her again. And she loved it, but her team wouldn't go for it.
Oh my gosh. So she loved it. She took it to like the board
She
and
was a go, but she's like, I'm sorry, I can't get the team on board.
oh my gosh. Okay, so then what?
So I went back into more revision. This is the thing. This is where most people, I think, would have put it away.
Yeah.
But each time I had to go through this process, there was this emotional roller coaster of like down, 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 and then a question of, do I believe in this project? Do I think there's something here? My agent still believed in it. And I felt like I do believe in this. I do think that there is something here. And so I'm going to try again. And so each time it kind of, in a way, I think sort of also cemented something in me, a belief in the project, in the work as well. I'm just very, very stubborn. So I did another revision, another huge revision. And the other thing that was tricky was that we were having a little trouble figuring out exactly my agent was having a little trouble figuring out where to place it because it was sort of shifting a bit, and it was kind of shifting into horror because
Mm.
there's some supernatural. So we went out on a third round of submissions, and this time she called me and she said, I have an editor who wants to get on the phone with you. And I was like, okay, look, I don't think I can do this again if it's going to be another like, I love it, but like, I just don't think I can handle that. So, okay, I guess I'll talk to this editor, but that editor ended up being the editor who bought it.
Oh my
So
gosh. Whew, third time's the charm.
third
Yeah.
time. So yeah, so I guess that was where all the bumps in my road. I mean, I felt so lucky to have this agent. I mean, and the whole time I was like, I'm sure she's gonna ditch me. She's gonna be like,
Like we've reached the end of the road or yeah.
which you think she would be well within her right to do, but she didn't. And I kept with that darn story. And
Yeah. Well, it almost feels like, yeah, every time you it, like it strengthened your resolve. You're like, if I've put this much time into it, I'm gonna see it through.
I think there's a line there too, because there's also like, do you get to the, I mean, I definitely felt like the point where at the point at the end where I'm like, I can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
And my agent also was like, she's like, I have read this thing so many times now, I can't see it clearly anymore. And I mean, I do think there's a point where you do have to put a project down because you're just sort of, and this is what I learned in plays too, you're kind of just rearranging the deck chairs. Now throw in
Mm-hmm.
all the metaphors.
Yep.
You're not actually really addressing the sort of core issues.
Well, and that brings up a good point because I know I've had this issue or like people in my writing group where I've told one of the women in my writing group like I've read your manuscript so many times I just don't think I can see it clearly anymore.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, well, I guess I'm wondering if you had a writing group at this point and did you have to go and like seek out new beta readers or people who could look at it with fresh eyes?
I didn't have a writing group at this point. I was desperate for a writing group, but I didn't have one. I was really missing the community that I'd had as a playwright, and I didn't have it
Mm,
as an author. I now have a writing group, but I actually found it after this book was published. So no, I was very close to hiring an outside editor because I felt like I'm just maybe I'm not seeing it clearly anymore, and I don't think my agent can see it clearly either. But I actually didn't really. I'd love to say that I had these great beta readers, but I didn't.
mm.
It was mainly me and then my husband.
But I guess you also had these very generous editors, the two previous ones who were, almost essentially like giving you a beta read and giving you
They were.
feedback. Yeah.
They were. I mean, I'm still incredibly grateful to those two people for doing that because they there was nothing in it for them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like, you see a lot of, I think, frustration from authors about the publishing industry can be very frustrating. But then I also see a lot of like the people who work in the industry, they just genuinely love books for the most
Yeah.
part. I feel like that's a great example of like they did not have to do that for you. They weren't getting paid. They didn't end up buying your book and but they just love books and helping authors and
Yeah. I think that it felt like such a gift that I was being given because they had obviously read it and they'd read it closely. And their feedback was so thoughtful
yeah.
that that really meant a lot to me. And it made me feel like, okay, I'm close here.
Hmm. And I guess too, when you think about beta readers, you do have to be careful with who you get as a beta reader because some people are, maybe not going to give the most helpful feedback, whereas this was feedback from book editors.
I have to say I'm very sort of, yeah, I think any writer should be. I'm very specific with who I ask to read the
Hmm.
book. I feel like I've met writers who are just sort of so desperate. And I understand the isolation. You're so desperate for someone to please read this thing that they might give it to somebody who isn't really their reader.
Hmm.
I know, and again, this is something that I learned in playwriting. When a work is really new, you have to protect it.
Yeah.
And first of all, I think you can do a lot of damage by sending something out into the world that's too nascent. Like it's just you can see what it's going to become, but the reader what doesn't necessarily see it, and in that case, feedback can sometimes be really damaging.
Hmm.
This wasn't the case, obviously, with what I was doing because I was at this point so many drafts in. I think through many years of playwriting and so doing a lot of workshopping and getting feedback from lots of different people there and then going that I brought that into this process. And so I feel like giving and taking feedback is sort of a learned skill. Obviously, giving it is a learned skill, but taking it is also a learned skill because you have to protect yourself. You have to be able to listen to the feedback and take what's going to be useful for you and leave the rest.
Yeah. I would say I think the best feedback often is the stuff that you deep down already knew, but you just
Yes,
had to hear it from someone else.
absolutely 100%.
Yeah. But I also agree with you that like, and I was just talking about this to one of my students the other day, is that when you're getting feedback from a critique group or, writing group, you have to think about where you are in the process because if you're just in the drafting process and you're sending them first chapters, like all you might need is just for them to be like, keep going. We want to see
Yeah.
what's going to happen next. And like that might be all you need.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have a draft and you're like, something isn't working here and I don't know what it is, that's when you need the more critical feedback. Because I do see people that just are like reworking the first few chapters over and over again based on the advice of their critique group, and then they're never writing the rest of the book.
Absolutely. And it's a real trap. I
Yeah.
think I think so many of us are like, we're perfectionists,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so we're just going to work it and work it and work it. And I think I now know for myself, and I think it was that NaNoWriMo experience partly that taught me, is that when I'm in the first draft phase, I have to get to the end.
Mm-hmm. And
I
just see
just
what you have.
exactly
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
going. And
Yeah.
then when you've hit the end, then you can go back with all of the knowledge that you've gained from the process of reaching the end. And now you can start doing that sort of deep work of revision.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I want to go to the point where you finally have an editor. And well, and one question I have is how did you feel when this editor was like, "Okay, I'm going to take it to my team?" Were you like, nail biting and feeling
Totally. Totally.
terrified?
I was on the phone with her and I think I didn't really fully understand why. I figured I was just in the same situation before where she was going to give me all this lovely feedback
And then
and
say, "But."
and then say but.
Uh-huh.
And so I think I asked, I'm like, what's the next step? And she's like, oh, well, the next step is I'm going to take it to my team and hopefully they'll say yes and we can make an offer. I was like, what? Like, what? And
Yeah.
then yes, definitely nail biting. And so that, and I know, and that phone call I now know was, we were both sort of feeling each other out, going like, do we have the same view of the book? And she told me some of the things that she was thinking in terms of little tweaks, because of course
Hmm.
there was another revision,
Of course.
little
How many
tweaks
are
and
we at
things.
by now?
Oh my God, I don't
Yeah.
count. That's the thing. I do not count
Yeah.
revisions. I just date them.
Yeah.
But I love the revision process. Like through all of
Yeah.
this, I love the revision process because it's always going deeper and deeper and deeper and just tightening those threads. And I
Hmm.
find it incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, so then you had an editor, then they made you an offer, and what was the experience of having that first book come out?
This is where it's really different from a play. The book came out and then it still exists.
Mm,
And not the plays don't still exist, but they're ephemeral. That once the performance is done, it's kind of like this thing you can talk about, but no one can experience.
right.
So it was really, I was used to the sort of high peak of a play coming out and then the crash of it being finished. Whereas this was more of a gentle hill.
Mm, hmm.
There was all the lead up to it. And I mean, it was exciting. It was just really, it was incredible. It was immensely satisfying after all of this time, because this is all of these revisions that I've been talking about, and this is years.
Yeah.
So it was immensely satisfying to have hold it in my hand and then have people send me photos of it and to start getting reader responses and have people read it and get it. That was the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that it was working. My editor, I really, she's the same editor who I have for the second book, and I love her. She's fantastic. She's so smart and thoughtful and reads really deeply, and I trust her. I feel very honored to be able to work with her, and I feel very, very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. As I learn more and more about the publishing industry, I feel very grateful for what I've had so far, and I hope it will continue. But I was very naive going in.
Yeah, well, I mean, hence this whole podcast. I feel like a lot of us, and maybe we need to be a little
There's some
bit,
value in naivete.
yeah, to not know exactly how hard it
Mhm.
is, but I think you do need to know a little bit to temper expectations.
But I think that's what's so good about what is happening in your podcast is hearing about all these other journeys, because I've since heard other writers' journeys, and I know of people who spent years trying to get an agent. But then when they got an agent, 2 weeks later, there was like an auction for their book, right? Like, like it feels like
Right.
for everybody, there are,
Right.
yeah, as I think you've said, there are the easy parts and there are the hard parts. And I think it's just so important to to try and step back and see this as a long road, as you know, like a long journey that is going to
Yep.
have parts that are really exciting and a lot of parts that are not, and parts that are heartbreaking and parts that are just like work.
So I guess my next question that I'm curious about is you spent so long working on Beneath the Stairs, and then I'm assuming it's like, okay, time to work on a new project. And was that hard to have it, or did you have an idea for a new
I
project?
had the idea, but and I sold it with just an outline in 5 chapters. And so my editor was like, okay, so when do you think you'll have the first draft done? And I was like, well, let's see. If I go with my old track record, 8 years, which is obviously like not the thing to do. It's not exactly the pace
Not
that they.
ideal.
So I feel like actually with this second book, I've learned more how I want to write a book because now I've first of all I have an outline. I mean, I'm still there's still a lot. It's a loose outline and all of that sort of thing, but it was immensely helpful. And I'm also getting a better understanding of for my personal writing process, these are the hard parts, these are the easy parts. You have to make it through the hard parts to get to the easy parts. And I'm having a better sense of what the whole journey is. And so I feel like that's given me a better understanding of where I'm at. So on a really hard day,
Hmm.
I know, okay, this was a hard day. Don't despair. Keep going.
Right.
Keep going. That idea of like, you have to get to the end. You have to get to the end before you
Hmm.
can go back and really revise.
Yeah. Every writer is different and every book is different. So I'll just say for me personally, I feel like I am getting faster at writing my novels, but it's because I've learned so much from all the revisions I did on the ones that came before that, I can
Absolutely.
say like, oh, I wrote this one pretty quickly, but I never would have been able to do that had I not had all the experience from all the other ones.
You're you're always standing on top of what's come before. Like that's why I don't feel like there's such a thing as wasted writing. Like all those drafts that I did of Beneath the Stairs, and I'm not even, this isn't like an exaggeration to say I have written the equivalent of another book in all of those revisions because I was literally pulling out giant chunks and throwing them away. But I learned from all of them. So I'm really into gardening. And so I feel like it's a lot of it is about like, you have to have the soil and all of that, all of those early
Mm-hmm.
drafts, the revisions, all the stuff you don't see is what's feeding the stuff that you do see. I mean, I'd like it to be faster.
Right. But it's good to remind yourself that it's not wasted time, it's not wasted words. It's all feeding the soil that's growing
The
the
nice
new
flower
project.
that we can all admire.
Yeah. It sounds like it was kind of a nice transition to the new project. Correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, you sold it on proposal
Yes.
to your current editor, so you didn't have to go on submission for that one. You sent it to them, they liked it, and they were like, "Okay, we're good to go." And then you had to finish writing it. The first book was, you said, more kind of horror.
This one's more of
This
a
one is,
thriller. Yeah. Yeah.
and so are you staying in that horror thriller
I'm
zone?
staying in that zone. Yeah. The first book was it was an accidental horror.
Uh-huh. It
I
happens.
did not I did not really understand what horror was. I always thought horror was like Nightmare on Elm Street, like sort of a lot of violence, slasher, blood and gore, which is not my thing. But I was writing about a haunted house and I have a ghost in it. And so the supernatural is what moves it into the horror category.
See, I'm glad you're saying this because I had the same thing where when I hear horror, I think slasher, blood and guts. I'm like, oh, that's not for me. But then to know like that actually horror encompasses kind of ghost stories, because ghost stories are
Yeah.
very much my jam. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'm more into horror than I
Yeah,
thought.
I did not know that. And yet when I look around on my bookshelf, I think a lot of the things that I read would be classified as horror. And none of them have that kind of excessive violence, which is not something that I'm into.
Hmm.
Nothing against it, it's just not my thing.
Right. I guess you can have a horror that's more about the like creeping dread and the like the vibe.
I honestly find that the way that books are positioned, it is a fine science that I do not understand.
Yep.
And I feel like as a writer, I mean, I think some writers are very, very strategic about it. I'm not. I I'm more of the I'm going to write the story that I need to write, and it will figure out how to place it. And I trust the people who are far more knowledgeable about this, like my agent and the editor and marketing and all of those people who have a much better, deeper understanding of the current marketplace and what's going on. I really believe also that each book, each story is different. You might your writing process for it might be a little bit different, and it sort of teaches you itself as it is written.
Yeah. And you might go into it thinking you're writing one thing and then it comes out something
A bit like
else.
children, right? Like you're like, oh, this is my child who I only have so much control over.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
Aware of that phenomenon. Well, so what is something that has surprised you on your writing or publishing journey? And it can be something good or bad or one of
I think
each.
what surprised me is that gentle hill of publication, the way that there's all this lead up to pub day, but pub day is just the beginning. I mean, in some ways, it's just a signpost along the road sort of thing, a really nice signpost. But then it keeps going. It doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
For for one thing, as for readers, your book is out there and they can discover it. I mean, people are discovering Beneath the Stairs now, and for me, that was like, oh, that's so long ago. But like, that's wonderful. But also, as the writer, the work also doesn't stop. I mean, you have to keep talking about it. You have to keep reaching out and doing stuff. I mean, but you also have to keep writing. Like you have to keep going. So the longevity sort of thing, the both the gifts of that and the work of that. I don't think I was expecting so much. I was so used to sort of like this lead up to the big event, and then it's all done.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of something else because we met in person at BoucherCon in New Orleans recently, and went to your panel where you were talking about Beneath the Stairs. And is it strange to talk about a book that you started writing so long ago? You're probably like, I was a different person when I started writing.
That's strange. I was very, very deeply in Keep This For Me.
Right.
And then I actually had expected that that was what I was going to talk about on the panel. And then when the panelists sent me the
Oh no.
questions, I was like, wait, what? And suddenly I'm like, of course, it's not out yet. She's talking about Beneath the Stairs. So I had to kind of remind myself a little bit about, I'm not as deeply in that project, but it's still inside me. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, because I guess that happens a lot where, by the time the author's book is coming out, they're already working on the next project. They're in
Yeah,
a new story, but then you've got to kind of wear both hats and be like, okay, well, I've got to talk about this one that's out, but then go back and keep writing on this new one that nobody knows about yet.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I'm starting to trying to get into book three, which I mean, no one's going to know about that one for a little while. I don't have a title or anything like that, but I'm starting to kind of, and need to, for the first draft, immerse myself deeply in that world, but still be able to talk about Keep This For Me.
Keep this for me. Yeah. Oh,
But,
hard.
but also a nice problem to
But a
have.
good problem to, yeah, exactly. We're gonna have to, I think, wrap it up, but I end every episode with a tip for the road for our listeners. And so, yeah, I'm wondering if you have a particular tip you want to
I
share.
do. I had several tips that I was thinking about. My tip is that you are ultimately the biggest advocate for your work, and you are the one who has to believe in it. And so, if you get rejections, which you will, you are the one ultimately who has to make the choice. Do I keep moving forward? Do I put this away? Like, no one else can make that choice for you, and sort of be honest with yourself. But I do think that if you believe in your work, you have to keep moving it, try and move it forward, because there's so many readers, and there's more than, you know, there's so many agents, there's so many editors. I trust that you will find your reader. You will, I really believe that you will find your reader. You maybe haven't found them yet, but if you believe in your work, You will. I fundamentally believe that. But still keep going, but keep moving, keep writing,
Right. And I think you make a really good point, which is like, there's maybe going to come a crossroads where you're going to have to decide, should I just put this project away and
Yeah.
start working on something new, or should I keep revising this one, keep working on this one? And it's like, oh, you have to like really just access your intuition. And like you said, you're the only
Yeah.
one who can really answer that, or maybe you move on to a new project and then later you come back.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes the best thing is to actually put it down for a while and work on something new. And then you are able to better assess, like, okay, do I still think that that project has value? Or was it a learning experience? Was it the soil?
Right. And yeah, and I think you can believe in a story and be like, I believe that this story taught me a lot,
Yes,
but it's time to move on, you know?
absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. I had no idea the whole saga behind Beneath the
It's a
Stairs. So,
sad saga, but with a
but
happy
a
ending.
happy
I know.
ending.
Yes.
The Long Road to Publishing is produced and edited by me, Eva Langston, and the intro and outro music comes from the artist Soundroll on Upbeat. You can find me online on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack with the handle Eva Langston. Even better, find my newsletter for writers at evalangston.substack.com and feel free to send me an email. The podcast address is longroad.pub@gmail.com. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and I'll be back soon with more stories about the long and winding path to publishing and more tips for the road.